There we go. Wonderful.
Cool.
How
Let me
are you?
that's straight. Try and get face into the middle. There we go. It's always, you know, you do like TV interviews and stuff and trying to, they're like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you just make it?
It's not TV. This is just it's YouTube. It's all it is. And yeah, we're a fairly small subscriber list, a couple of thousand, a modest thousand. But yes, we do try, and slowly but surely we're chipping away, and it's building and it's getting bigger. And yeah, the app's doing pretty well. And yeah, the Facebook group you're part of, we've seen it. The numbers are pretty good as well. But enough about all of that. This interview is about you. Now, you have been making quite a bit of waves, because every time I open up my Facebook, especially during election time, I see your face, and I see you're walking around in Westminster, you're walking over there, you're flying over there, you're here, you're everywhere. Who on earth are you? So before we dig into it, help me pronounce your name. Hayley.
Yeah.
Hayley.
Not try to say name. Reichert. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's easy. All right. Reichert. Yes. What do you prefer, English or Afrikaans?
Oh, English. I don't like my surname, and my dad's side of the family are Afrikaans, but I was raised English. My Afrikaans is kak.
Well, perfect. Because look, I was raised Afrikaans, but I've been overseas for so long. I'm finding that I'm struggling, because I lived in the UK for several years before I came to Australia, and it's always English nonstop. Even with my kids, I've got 3 beautiful children. They're foreigners. They know how to sing in Afrikaans.
My kids are speaking more with the English accent, but there are times where I feel like they're more South African than I am, because they're like, oh, I love South Africa, I love South African food. And
oh yeah, no, my kids can sing in Afrikaans. They don't know what they're singing, because it's just music playing on the radio for them. But when they talk and they argue and all of those things, it's all English. Well, Hayley, can you please take a few minutes and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Hayley Reichert. I am a proud and passionate South African. I've been living in London for the last 16 years, originally from Upper Highway, Durban. I know I come across a lot of Durbanites, particularly here in the UK. And my journey has basically been that I moved abroad. I was young, questioning what my purpose in life after I'd been here for a few years. And I thought, you know, let me go make some South African friends. So I went onto Facebook, came across this little group that called themselves the DA Abroad. They were hosting a protest, the No to Secrecy bill, outside the South African High Commission in Trafalgar Square. So I thought, what a great way to go meet some South African friends. I had no clue about politics. I had no interest in it
whatsoever. Let's go riot.
And you know, I literally was going to meet South Africans. That was it. And ended up, that was my kind of light bulb or aha turning point. And I just realized it was the moving abroad that made me realize that I was so passionately South African. And I realized that I am someone, I have a voice, I can drive change. So that was my kind of pivotal moment. And then I got involved with the DA Abroad. Fast forward to the 2014 elections, I noticed that a lot of people were saying they went to go register to vote, but they had been told that they lost their citizenship. So I started up the loss of citizenship case, which still isn't over the line 10 years later. And then I ended up resigning from the DA Abroad, but in the meantime getting involved in the UK-based Nedbank South African Charity Golf Day, the South African Chamber of Commerce over here, various charity bits. And then fast forward to 2020, when our President Ramaphosa closed South African airspace during the start of the pandemic, landed up starting a project. So I'd since resigned from the DA, but I had a lot of friends in the DA, and we basically it ended up being the DA Abroad, a bunch of DA MPs, a bunch of other volunteers. We even had a team of psychologists on board, because we had over 22,000 people stranded around the world. We also we had 2 projects. So Project Home Away from Home, which was those stranded around the world trying to get back to SA, and then Project Lisa locked in SA, where the South African government was not allowing South Africans to leave. And we had people who worked abroad, people who were in SA temporarily on holidays, who got over for a wedding, people who are immigrating. So we had to lobby and threaten Home Affairs with urgent High Court action. And we basically pulled everyone under one banner for that. And then fast forward to, so that was an intense 5 months. I was getting about an hour's sleep a night.
Oh.
And usually about 5 o'clock in the morning, sometimes going straight through to 5 o'clock the next morning. Thousands and thousands of messages coming through, and dealing with all sorts. I mean, we dealt with ANC spies, scam artists, a drug mule, medical evacuations, charter flights, like traumas, tragedies, you name it, the quarantine, hotel quarantine stuff in South Africa, land border, like insane amount of, we could literally write a book and make a movie about it. And then the Move 1 Million project kicked off in South Africa. I said, I'm not getting involved. I need a break. And I landed up slap bang in the middle, involved with that and organizing the overseas protests, or not really protests, but like sort of gatherings. And then fast forward, it was, when was the looting was 2021. And then the flooding in KZN. So, I'm sort of known as like the queen of like static protests, marches, whatever, here in London. And then the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened, and a friend of mine based in the Netherlands gave me a call on the day of the invasion, saying, we've got South Africans in Ukraine that need your help. So it was Lorraine in the Netherlands, Kim in Johannesburg, and myself, basically helping get South Africans out of Ukraine. I had a few interactions. I'm being polite with with my wording, but a few challenging interactions with our government. And but just basically navigating, literally helping people. I've got random Ukrainian taxi drivers' numbers on my phone, a lady who runs a bus company that we got an Indian gentleman from Durban onto a bus and over the Polish borders, dealing with home affairs issues and all sorts of stuff. And then just my journey in the last couple of years. So as I said, I resigned from the DA abroad, but I still engage with a lot of them, and I've gotten to know a lot of different opposition party leaders in the last couple of years, and just everything that I've done. So a lot of people know me because I've helped them with home affairs related issues, passport, citizenship, that kind of stuff over the last 10 years. But it's all kind of led to this point now. So in this drive to trying to get South Africans abroad to vote, and I did 2 pre-election trips, one last year and one in April this year, engaging with the opposition parties, the leaders, going into townships and communities, engaging with people on the ground, and trying to get South Africans abroad to realize that the country is not broken. It is worth investing in it. It is worth driving the change. It's not broken. Every single issue in South Africa is completely fixable. And the overwhelming, I mean, I've engaged with tens of thousands around the world, and it's, I would say, a good 90% love SA, miss SA, want to see South Africa succeed. And a lot of them, if SA turned a corner, would potentially consider moving back. So my 10-year goal is to move back. And for me, I want to be someone who does something every single day. So I have a personal goal to speak it to a new person every single day, to try and drive the 1+ million. I think that there's potentially 2 million abroad, to driving change. So that's why now everything that I've done has kind of led to this point of setting up a civic organization called Operation Watershed, which is to drive South Africans abroad to investing in and seeing the value in driving change on the ground. And it's kind of, as we change the political, as the political landscape is changing in the country, we need to change the socioeconomic landscape as well. But everything is intertwined. So it's trying to just break things down for people. People go, oh, politicians sit up on a pedestal, and and it's just trying to make it more personal and kind of build bridges and connect people. So that was a really long introduction.
That was a great chat. Have a great rest of your day. I think we've covered everything. Wow. I would not want to see you after 1 cup of coffee, or even 2. That was amazing. That was incredible. I
need a shot of brandy, shots like Clippies in the brandy.
I would love to see AI try and put subtitles on that. It's going to be a lag. It's incredible. And look, I don't know how much you know about Oorsee's history. We try and keep it social. We try and keep it fun. We try and keep it stress-free. But the fact of the matter is, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you, is that when I started the app, it's because I had a hunger and a need inside of me to give something back to South Africa. It's where I'm from. It's my home. And I've lived in a lot of different places in South Africa, from the Namaqualand to the Great Karoo, which is one of my favorite places. I miss it dearly, and I write about it often, poetry and those things. But and then Cape Town, obviously, and from Cape Town to the UK, there it started. The moment I stepped into the UK, and look, I'll be brutally honest. I loved the UK. I love the magic around it. I love the winter. I love walking down Oxford Street on Christmas Eve and just seeing the magic happen. And it always felt like I was in some Harry Potter movie. It was magical. But one afternoon, we were living in Aldershot at the time, and I was working in Guildford. But I had to take the day off to get some meds at the hospital, and I took a wrong turn. And I drove up this hill. Now, if you know anything about Aldershot, you know it's an army town. And on this hill, or close to it, on the side of it, there was a statue. And I made a U-turn, and I looked at the statue, and I could clearly see the sentence written underneath it. This statue is resurrected to all the brave soldiers who gave their lives protecting their country in the Anglo-Boer War. Now, obviously, they were referring to British soldiers. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What were you defending? You were invading. Now, that's all ancient history, and I'm going to put that aside. But that stirred something in me, is that everyone has a misconception about South Africa. And I really wanted to shed some light on who we are as a culture. And then I moved to Australia, and then it just sort of flared up again. And I realized people have this misconception of who we are. And everyone that I engage with about this topic online always had an opinion. Now, that's the thing about South Africans. We all have strong opinions. We all know better, and we all know how we will fix the country and what we will do and what the government should do and what everyone back home should do. But the moment we get to doing, we do nothing. And then I saw you. And I remember being pulled into this chat meeting with the admin team and saying, well, we don't do political posts. We just don't. But we want to somehow support what is going on in South Africa with the upcoming election. And this was still last year, so next year and all of those things. And then your name popped up, and Flea said, well, look, I've done my research. This woman knows what she's talking about. She's doing a lot of work. Let's get her in and just make her officially the spokesperson for anything political back home. And you know what? It made me happy, because there it was. Everyone, especially when someone comes to me about, well, the politics needs to do this, then 10 other South Africans would give their opinion. And bless your soul, we know you've got some good points there, but you don't always know better. Have you done your research? Do you know the person you're talking about? Do you know the person you're recommending? All of those things. And when I looked at you, and as you were doing your videos, and as you were doing your walks with different political people back home, with different people arranging all of these rallies and all those things, I could see that you're someone that actually goes into the mix and the thick of it all and makes an effort. Now, you originally said to me, you went to this gathering to make friends. But that's something sparked in you that day. And I can hear in the way that you're explaining it, you're not nearly done. What happened?
No.
What happened that made you, why you've got nothing to lose. You in the UK, you can turn your back and live a happy life and die a pommie. What is it that makes you put so much of your energy back into South Africa? Because I envy that. I envy it, honestly.
Sure, that's a big question. So firstly, I would just want to say thank you to you guys and the team for allowing me to post on the groups. And what I noticed was a lot of admins and a lot of the different groups around the world were allowing those posts. And I'm so grateful to the admins, because a lot of admins don't typically allow, political and charity posts, because it opens up a can of worms, and I get it. But it was doing it. And again, this is why I'm taking this civic route rather than wearing any particular party hat, because as much as I engage with the parties, because it's about changing perceptions, and it's about educating. So I work with 3 words: educate, empower, and inspire. You can't inspire someone until you've empowered them. You can't empower them until you have educated them. And so coming back to a question of what, I think for me, it was just the realization of growing up in post-apartheid South Africa. So I'm 38. I was, a couple of years old in 1990 when apartheid officially sort of ended. I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old with the dawn of the new democracy. And going into high school, I did history, and it was weird because I kind of felt like it was shoved down our throats. Being, white youth at the time, we were made to feel guilty about something that we didn't have any role in. And it wasn't until, although I understood, we did South African history, so completely understand what, the ills of apartheid and the impact, but I didn't really understand it until I moved to the UK and got involved with the diaspora, with the Black South African community here. And I went to events and I engaged and had long conversations. I remember one particular conversation with 2 coloured ladies in America. It was like a 3-4 hour long conversation, but they were telling me about what they experienced and how they were physically manhandled by the policemen of the time. And a lot of the Black South Africans here would say, we were children when our parents were harassed for their dompas or our houses were raided. So, and for me, and again, this is why I'm trying to kind of bridge the gaps, because listening to those stories and really gaining a much deeper psychological, emotional insight into what it was like being a Black South African in apartheid. And yes, a lot of particularly the expats are, but that was 30 years ago. And it's like, but when you understand the psychological impact, when you understand that those stories are passed down, and then obviously understanding what's happened or whether what's gone wrong in the country for the last 30 years, and we are nowhere near where we should be. And there's so much that stems from the colonial rule, the apartheid rule, which has prohibited so many South Africans from getting to where we would like them to be. And the way I see it is, you are only as strong as your weakest link. And being a South African, how can I call myself a proud, passionate South African when millions are food insecure, living in poverty? And, when I go into these communities and into these townships and I've built friendships, and there is just the spirit of Ubuntu and this, like you say, a boer maak 'n plan, like there's such an entrepreneurial spirit. And, when I was in Soweto in April, just seeing that entrepreneurial spirit alive and well and thriving, something called Casinomics, township economy, is incredible. And there are so many incredible South Africans who just need a step up in life. They need access to training, resources. They have so much skill. I've was introduced to a lady in a township, turns out 10 minutes down the road from where I grew up. I've registered an NPO with her. She has so much to give her community. She has such a calling for social work in her community, and this journey of somebody else who unfortunately has since passed away contacting me saying, I know this family, they're a deserving family, can you please help? Can you help the daughter get through matric last year? And the friendship that's developed between the mom and I is just incredible. So for me, it's a case of, how can I call myself a proud, passionate South African? And, and again, it's, we're proud when the books are playing, but what about the rest of the time? And we love South Africa. We love going back. And it's just, there's so much value in, the way I say it is, South Africa's potential outweighs its current problems. And for me, it's just, I want to be somebody who, I don't want to sit back, abroad on my ivory tower going, oh, whatever, if and when South Africa turns the corner, like it's a pipe dream, it's never going to happen. It can happen, but it's only going to happen if we all make it happen. So where that drive comes from, I don't know. I just know that it's just in me, and through all my life experiences and, different engagements that I've had with different people. But there's this fire, which is just, and if I can try and impart some of that fire onto other people by educating, empowering, and inspiring them, and getting all of us collectively, because no one person can change. Nobody's going to come in on their horse and, and save the country. No politician or no single party is going to, it is collaboration. And that's what we're seeing with the government of national unity and being engaged on the ground with charities and civic organizations. And for me, it's not a case of starting a whole new charity and reinventing the wheel. The initiative that I'm setting up is about collaboration and teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. So it is about those of us abroad working with organizations. There are so many good people on the ground doing so many incredible things. How can we amplify that? How can we help them grow and expand? So yeah, that's it's just this deep fire.
I can see the fire. Don't you worry. It's I believe it's you're right. As a South African abroad, we have a oh, the English has just left me now because you're blowing me away with your speech. But we've got a responsibility to put back into the country. Now, if you don't want to, fine, fine. But you're gonna lie if you're telling me that there aren't something ticking away inside of you saying, well, oh, could I have done more? Could I have done this? Could I have given a little more? I mean, that's the sort of things that if we stand together, we can definitely make a difference. And I believe it's already starting to happen. Now, look, I'm a dad of little girls. I've got 2 daughters, I've got a son, but and that makes me nervous to just go and visit South Africa. I've been back there back in 2017 and not been there back since, not because of any political reason or anything like that. It's just because of financial reasons, really. It's expensive to go. But I just, and it's really amazing that just before our interview started, a friend of mine, he was just there. He texted me. He's like, you won't believe it. He's like, South Africa haven't had load shedding in 3 months. They've got so much power that they generated. They're shutting down certain power generators because they don't need them. And I mean, come on, give me a break. When we left South Africa in 2018, the whole load shedding thing was just, no, sorry, 2015. The whole load shedding thing just was about going for about a year, but it wasn't really that bad. I mean, it was 2 hours a week, maybe 5 hours or whatever. But it was sort of like, it was really funny. It's like, oh, this is weird. When is this going to stop? Probably soon. Don't stress. And then come 2022, my friends they're all in the construction industry in South Africa. They're like, mate, it's not funny anymore. It is not funny. That we've got we're on the side, we've got heavy machinery out, we can't work because there's no power. Now, 2 years later, 2 months, is it 2 months after the election? Am I wrong? Am I right?
Yeah, end of May. So, but the
Yeah,
government was formed in
well,
June, so
it
basically
feels
2
like
months.
yesterday. It feels like yesterday. Things are already looking up. Now, my question is, and I believe this is the question on a lot of South Africans abroad's lips. Is the improvement, does it have anything to do with the political restructure that's currently happening in South Africa?
It's quite a complex. I don't think it's
I'm gonna put it all on you. You're all I've got. It's not like Ramaphosa's answering my calls.
So I think at the end of the day, government is administration. And so I'm about 3/4 of the way through reading Chris Pappas' book. So Chris is he's DA member, he's mayor of Umgeni, and it's and I strongly recommend anyone who wants to understand more of the grassroots level, because we always think of politics in terms of the senior MPs and things, but we don't really realize, I mean, politics is everywhere, and it comes down to competence and administration. That's it. And if you get that right, then things will turn around. So in his book, Chris talks about changing perception. So obviously he's come in, he's got staff that are used to a certain way of how things operate, and staff were really nervous. So there was a huge thing about juggling internally, managing the staff. They're all scared about losing their jobs and stuff, but also externally with the community, about them inheriting the issues, how funds were shifted, and things were not done properly. He talks about the vehicles, for example, something as simple as vehicle maintenance. Every car should have a book with what's happened, when has it been maintained, what parts have been replaced, all that kind of stuff, and none of that existed. So it is like the core basics, and that's why for me it's not just the high level national politics, it's breaking it down to the lowest root. And we've got municipal elections coming up, local elections coming up in 2 years' time. Those of us abroad can't vote, but it's trying to get those abroad to understand how we can play a role in helping drive the change on the ground at that grassroots level in line for 2029 and beyond. So it is literally, I mean, I know, those who've come in from different parties are, really shaking things up. I mean, it's new for them as well, because a lot of them, they've been in opposition now to actually be in government. And, when you look at parties, I use the DA reference because they were the main opposition party. They are now both in government and in opposition. So, you know, it's quite a challenge for them. But I think change is good. But it's just how much, you know, how many inroads can they actually make? But I think I think everyone needs to realize no one person, no one party can fix everything. It is about, again, going back to the teamwork kind of thing. So I'm really positive about the change. I think people need to be realistic. It's not going to change overnight. So for me, again, the Operation Watershed is what I think is a 15 to 20-year project covering the next 3 to 4 elections.
Right.
You know, and it's just managing. There are also, and I have to say that there are good people in every party. There are good people within the ANC, and you've got party and then you've got government. And obviously there's a lot of crossover there, but and you know, people using their government roles incorrectly, you know, for party gain. But there's a lot of good people in government. There are a lot of hardworking people in different roles across different sectors.
I believe it. I don't believe it when they're wearing red little hats, but for the rest of it, honestly, I believe it.
And I think it's just, you know, it's trying to kind of drive the notion that inherently most people are good and want to do good. And at the same time, they are all living in South Africa. They experience the same frustrations, and, you know, so I am really positive about this government of national unity. I think it's going to change. You know, I think they have a really hard job ahead to keep it together. But I think that, you know, it's not going to be an overnight success. It's not going to be a massive turnaround because there's such a backlog of issues that need to slowly but surely, you know, be worked through, and there's only so many hours in a day, and politicians, I know a lot of people think that they are robots and that they can just go, but they are humans. They also have their own families and stuff. So I think it's just South Africans need to be realistic that this is going to take time, but it is solvable. We have not, you know, people kind of see it as a train heading straight to the end of a cliff. We haven't, the train hasn't fallen off a cliff. So this is now the putting the brakes on and slowing it down before you can turn direction. And so yeah, I'm positive about the changes that are coming. Obviously there's some concerns. You've got, you know, EFF, MK parties to be concerned about. And when you look at, and I know you mentioned about Oorsee being more kind of social, but it's politicians, you know, you may not be interested in politicians or politics, but politics is interested in you. And I know that was a campaign said, you know, it was said in by parties in the lead up to the elections. Everything we do, everything how we live, the taxes we pay, what the, you know, the structure of our roads, everything comes down to politics. If you want the change, it has to happen through political or legal means. So, you know, if you want to change a piece of legislation in order to change something tangible in your day-to-day life, it's got to go through political and legal means. So, but yeah, ultimately, I think that people have woken up to realize that change is possible. And this is all of us as ordinary citizens helping educate each other on how government works, what your vote actually means, the difference it can make, the cost involved in an election. The IEC have been underfunded. There's more cuts coming. So that is one thing that I want to champion for, is more funding, so we can make sure that the IEC remain, you know, that they can hold free and fair elections, so that our democracy isn't under threat. Our democracy is in decline. Less people are participating in elections. Those under 35 have spent 30 years in a failing democracy, so they're not participating. They're like, well, democracy doesn't work, why should we bother? So it's educating our youth. If, you know, in the lead up to this election, a lot of people, civic groups, were saying, if we could just get the youth to vote, it could swing the vote very, very differently. So it is all about, sorry.
I want to touch on that because I'll admit I had that sort of thinking when I was younger. But if you go think about it, if there's 2 million people under 35 that says, well, screw this, I'm not going to vote, that's 2 million votes that could have gone to the right person. But saying all of these things, we do understand that there's years of corruption. We know there was corruption on many sides that needs to be undone. And like you said, you start with the small changes. Even if you start with the basic things like the stationary budget in an administration building, you work your way all the way through to whatever the ministers are spending. It takes time fixing all of those things. And in the meantime, people are still hungry. People are still struggling to find work. I'm abroad because I couldn't really find work for myself. I had to run my own business over there. Thank goodness I knew what I was doing. It was doing all right. But I knew it was coming to an end sooner or later because competition was becoming really cutthroat and fierce. I had to go abroad. So we just want to acknowledge that we no direct political affiliation, but we understand people are struggling. But it's people like Hayley here that's really trying to turn the tide on these things. And it's our duty just to help put the word out, because currently it's the least we can do, because other people like you, Hayley, are doing the actual heavy lifting. Now, I do apologize, I interrupted you. You can carry on. I do want to touch base on your watershed project. I want to know a bit more about that and how can we get the Oorsee community, for those that can and want to, get involved in helping pushing that forward.
Yeah, perfect. So just to say, so nobody pays me to do this. I'm actually a mortgage and protection advisor here in the UK. So, you know, so if there's anyone that's watching this that's in the UK that's looking for a mortgage or a life cover, let me know, you know, because, and I did put a video about this, you know, it's because people think I work for the High Commission or, you know, Home Affairs or whatever, but I don't. I do this purely out of the goodness of my own heart, out of my own pocket a lot of the time. You know, I'm literally, my boss is South African, and thankfully, you know, he quite, as long as I'm submitting business. But you know, for me, it is a case of so the way I explain to people is I'm not a high-flying CEO, I'm not an influencer, I'm not a celebrity, I'm not a career politician, I'm just an ordinary South African. And then I rattle off all the tens of thousands of people I've assisted and all the stuff that I've done, and I'm going, you don't need to have a degree in politics to be a politician. You don't need to spend, you know, hours and hours. There's so many different ways that people can get involved. And if you haven't got time, but maybe you're willing to give $5 a month, great. If you've maybe got 5 minutes here and there, if you can do an hour a week, whatever it is. And this is my whole driver with Operation Watershed. So the way I see it is you've got civil society and civic groups here, civil society being all of us, and then you've got politicians over here. And again, remember, politicians are human beings at the end of the day, just like us. And there's this huge valley in between. And the politicians struggle because, you know, trying to get people to understand, for a political party, the cost involved in reaching out. So a lot of the guys abroad will say, oh, well, you know, they deserve the government they get. They're still voting for the ruling party. And it's this very negative kind of approach. And then when I break it down and I say, do you understand what is involved for a party or a civic initiative to go into these communities? You might need private security, depending on the area you're going into. You usually need some form of reason for someone to come and listen to you. So it could be, so when I went into Umlazi in Durban with Rise and Zanzi last year, it was burger and chips in the boot. We had a whole bunch of individual packed burger and chips. There's a cost to that. So it's about 100 to 150 Rand per person to go and do an outreach in a community. And that's just one interaction. You need multiple interactions to be able to, multiple touch points. It's marketing, basically. So radio, TV.
£7 or £6. Come on. It's £5 even. No?
Yeah. So for me, it's a case of educating people about what is actually involved in running a political campaign, what is actually involved in being a ward councillor, running, you know, being an MP or whatever, so people can actually really understand just how much hard work it is. I mean, being a ward councillor is the worst job in the world. But, you know, and they're there till, you know, they could be standing at a burst water pipe at 2 o'clock in the morning. The municipality's not doing their job. They're calling the department to come dig up a hole. They're calling the next department to come and fix whatever the problem is, you know, but they've still got to get up and take their kids to school the next morning. So it's getting people to really understand what goes into running a community, running a ward, running, you know, whatever. And then translating that to how can we get involved abroad? So as I say, you've got civics and you've got politics and you've got this huge desolate valley in the middle. I want Operation Watershed to sit in the middle. So in South Africa, and I completely understand, a lot of the civic groups get corporate funding. They cannot be seen to lean any which way politically. They have to be completely non-partisan, and it limits them in terms of the impact that they can have. So, you know, they do a fantastic job with the core, how government works, why should I vote, how do I register, blah, blah, blah. But they need to take it a step further. It's about creating those critical thinking skills. In, you know, if you've got someone who's getting a grant, 350 Rand, 1,000 Rand, whatever it is that person going to use that money for food, on data, or on a taxi to try and get themselves a job. They're going to go for food. So a lot of them don't have access. We have access to information at our fingertips, you know, and it's to try and find ways. So one thing I want to look at is a project called reverse billing. So it's an app where it doesn't cost the end user in terms of data. They can access it for free. It's not charging them anything. And we can provide certain level of information, you know, and education through those apps. So that, yeah.
No, I do apologize, but because there's so much great info that's coming out of here. So I think that'll probably be one of the biggest concerns for people abroad that's trying to give back to South Africa in terms and financially, is that how do they know that the money is used in an honest way? Because that's always my biggest concern. Even if I give it here to the Red Cross or anyone, I'm concerned. So I mean, and especially for those that decide, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to give to a political organization. I'm going to be giving, say, big. How do I know he's not going to go change the rims on his Merc? Is he going to actually use it for the right thing? Is that something you guys can invest into and help manage? How does that all work?
That's exactly what I want to do. So I've always been a stickler with any little small bit that I've been fundraising here and there. It's about transparency and accountability. So Operation Watershed is not yet registered. I need to put all the documentation together to get that sorted. I've got a company in South Africa that's going to be helping me with that. And I'm going to be running one of our flagship projects is going to be about building, saving jobs, creating jobs through the company's called Altvest. So for me, it's about accountability and transparency. So I wanted to be a system in place where if somebody, so depending on all the different projects, and I'll go through the different streams in a minute, the sort of core areas of focus. If someone wants to support, perhaps it is a court case to lobby for online voting or more voting stations abroad. Perhaps it is a court case about cutting red tape in business. Maybe it's agriculture, maybe it's crime, maybe it's whatever it is that, you know, there's so many projects, but I want them to know that their funding is being ring fenced for that particular project.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and it's, again, it's you know, of a, are you there?
I lost you there for full 3 seconds and I was like, ooh, what's happening? It might be on let me just, yeah, no, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Carry on.
So basically I get really frustrated because a lot of these really big charities, their marketing budget is huge, you know, their salary costing is massive, and it's you donate £1, $1, but of that, maybe a couple of cents is actually going to the root cause. So look, every organization has operating costs. You can't get away from that. You know, if you're paying people salaries, if you're paying, you know, every laptop, electricity, internet, whatever, there's operating costs for everything. But it's, for me, it's trying to, I think the industry standard for small organizations is around 15% operational costs. So I wanted to be very open and transparent and say, this is the project, this is the estimated cost. Again, court case is really easy. If it is a court case lobbying for the online voting, which I believe is something that the IEC looked at around 10 years ago, but seems to have gone quiet on, that is a big win for those abroad because access to voting is a massive issue. So if it's a case of that's going to cost 3 million rand, it's literally going, here's the cost. And a lot of people don't realize. So when I talk about the dual nationality, the loss of citizenship issue, which is something I started 10 years ago, it's still not over the line. So, and it's to get people, what does that court case look like? You know, if you guys want overseas voting, what does that mean? It needs research. There's a cost to the legal team to research it first, to go, is it viable? If we take this to court, what are the chances? Do we have a good case to make this happen? There's a cost to that. Then it's court fees going to cost, and that depending on how long it drags out and how much back and forth there is. You know, and then it's the cost of actually getting things implemented. So I don't know exactly how much it cost the party, but I believe that it has cost more than R1 million for the loss of citizenship campaign. And what happened was, so I noticed it in 2014. I did my research on it, took it to the DA's legal case. You know, our DA abroad team took it to the DA's legal team. They said, yeah, we think that there's a case here. It got put on the back burner because of 2016 municipal elections. They took it to the Constitutional Court in 2018 and 2021, lost both cases. They then took it to the Supreme Court of Appeal in February of last year. It was approved. Well, the Supreme Court of Appeal ruled in the favor of the DA in June of last year. However, the Constitutional Court still has to ratify or approve the Supreme Court of Appeals ruling, which is what we're currently waiting for. It's just an administrative process. It's taken 10 years to change one little piece of legislation, which is like about 3 lines long, but it's cost more than R1 million. So, you know, when we put that into perspective, it could be project specific, short term. That's our end goal. That's what we need. That's how much it's going to cost. Here's a breakdown of costs. We need to crowdfund for it. It could be a case of something that's more ongoing. So one project that I want to get up and running, which is the Free Market Foundation, have a project on title deeds called Kailam. And I actually got an email from their CEO yesterday wanting to set up a call. I think they've done 13,000 title deeds. And it's to get people to understand. So it's 2,950 Rand is the cost to help clear the backlog in municipalities to give somebody their title deed. Now, if you've got a cluster, let's say there's a group in a particular area of 50, you could have had people living on these these plots for donkey's years, but they don't actually have ownership of their property, and it's, you know, of that piece of land. Yeah. Land is a huge issue in South Africa, but it's also understanding about spatial planning, you know, infrastructure. It is, if you have a section where people haven't been able to build their own homes, you know, they haven't been able to run tarred roads, electric cables, people are running illegal cables from, you know, wherever they can. I mean, when I was in Soweto, you know, see just cables everywhere. Yeah. Water, you know, and when I was with Songezo Zibi in Pretoria, so he's leader of Rise Mzansi, he's very big on this and about, you have to, you know, spatial planning, infrastructure, development of the country. If you think about a town or a city and you can see that area is growing, and it's like, well, where do we expand to? We need more houses, we need more schools, we need more, you know, clinics, whatever it is. Where do you expand to? And it's looking at what areas make sense to expand to, what is needed in order to grow the infrastructure, to give people their title deeds to their properties, and, you know, that it improves people's livelihoods. You know, it creates, there's job creation, there's development, all that kind of stuff. So you can take something as giving someone a title deed, but when you look at it en masse, what the bit end is, you know, so it's something as, I mean, that's 150 quid basically to give someone dignity, to be able to, and to help them improve their lives. Yesterday I had a call with a chap here in the UK who was talking about in
there we go.
Sorry. So yesterday's call with a chap in the UK was talking about, he runs a training program helping women in engineering. So he runs, it's about helping their people become professional, you know, improving their qualifications, and you know, whether it's becoming, you know, civil engineering, that kind of thing, to grow their profession. So you can see that continued development in their career journey. And you know, looking at, so he's got a project specifically targeting women in water and sanitation. Water and sanitation is a huge issue. If you're looking at quality of water, you know, Joburg's got a massive issue with that. Sanitation, you know, you've still got pit latrine toilets and kind of stuff. So it's, again, everything that I do is like looking at the bigger picture and the end goal, but also breaking it down to sort of the lowest level. And it is, you know, I'm talking more in terms of like getting South Africans abroad to fund these kind of projects, to help those on the ground deliver the projects, because we are physically not there ourselves to do it. But then it's also looking at how people can give of their time. So it could be, you are a lawyer, you've practiced in South Africa, you might have the skills and the knowledge about a particular area of law, which is a project that we are working on, particularly an area that we are trying to change a piece of legislation for. Maybe you can give of your skills then. Maybe you owned a business in South Africa, that you understand the red tape, the HR, you know, labor laws, all that kind of stuff. So maybe you can contribute your opinions, your experience to help create, because it's not just about saying, hey, there's a problem. What are those solutions? What things do we need to drive change? So yeah, I could talk about this all day, but basically, so with Operation Watershed, again, going back to that kind of like valley between civil society and politics, it's about building a bridge, you know, and explaining to people how we need to work with politicians. So anyone coming on board, it's like, yes, we will be working with political parties. There might be a court case working with a particular political party, because they might have the legal team and they might be able to offer that element. So it's collaboration at the end of the day, and it's just trying to get people to whatever your skills, whatever your background. And ultimately, I want Operation Watershed to be a one-stop shop, that there is something for everyone to get involved in. So you might not be interested in the IEC voting kind of stuff. You might not be interested in business entrepreneurship kind of stuff, skills training, job creation. You might not be interested in the political lobbying and advocacy. Maybe you're interested in the civic and charity side, because, as you mentioned before, there is still that immediate charitable need. So, charities do need our support, particularly like education, food security, that kind of stuff. And then independent media. So going back to the reverse billing, independent media, we would not know the level of corruption if it wasn't for independent journalists putting their lives on the line to report, to do their homework and provide the knowledge through their platforms to us.
Absolutely.
So
Sorry,
supporting,
just before we move too far away from what you said about charities still need immediate funding, I would even go as far as say not just them, just the everyday South African that needs that opportunity to be able to work, to eat, to have electricity, to have running water. Those are the things that people that used to have these things because they worked really hard 10 years ago are now struggling. And yes, there is a light shining on the horizon, but yeah, I guess what South Africans are hoping for, and I'm risking a lot speaking on behalf of South Africans if I haven't been there in the last decade, is that they want the change to come sooner, because that is what they voted for. They want progress to start showing as soon as possible, and as soon as it starts showing, the more people from abroad will put back into the country, the more people will start voting, the more people will start trusting. And that's where you guys would come in, where you're like the escrow between them and whatever a party or government or government infrastructure or whatever needs the funding, that they can rest assured that you guys will be managing that well.
Yeah, it is, and it's working. It's not just working with parties; it's working with government as well. So it is,
but not favoring a government, just a
no,
specific.
I mean, so we have to remember, we tend to think of government as in being a party, but it's not.
Administration.
You have parties, and then you have the government. That's the the administration. So it could be a case of I've had a number of conversations with people wanting to set up projects, and it's a case of being that link. So it could be they have an enormous, they could have an incredible project. They could be changing lives and doing incredible things, but they don't have that link to the right people in government. And one thing it's about who you know. It's one thing I've learned in life. And so I say to the caller, I said yesterday, yeah, sure, cool. I've got a couple of people I can think about, and now we have this government of national unity. Now we have people who are ministers and deputy ministers in key roles in key sectors, key portfolios. So I'm like, cool, well, I was actually meaning to connect with that person and reach out and, set up a call with that person, but great, now I have something else to talk to them about. And it's just, bridging, because I did a TikTok video the other day. It was like, politicians and government administrators, they know what they know, they don't know what they don't know. So it could be that it's just about connecting dots. For me, it's connecting dots, and it could be a case of connecting a particular project, getting a project off the ground, connecting the dots with government. Well, hey, you can actually apply for funding through this, this, and this. But if that connection wasn't made, maybe that organization didn't know about it, or that, so it's again, it's changing people's perceptions around politicians and everybody else. It is completely.
At the end of the day, and I found this is one of the things I found out when we were abroad, and I actually just spoke to a guy about it. Is that when you're over here, you hear certain things. You normally only hear the negative stuff first, so you sort of make up your mind before actually before you've been back there to see for yourself. Now, look, you're doing amazing work, and please forward me all your details that I'm allowed to put at the bottom of this YouTube video, how people can get involved, and how they can reach out to you if they want to have it, if they need more details about this, if they want to understand a bit more, because we touched on 1,000 different topics, and I bet there's 10,000 more that inside the current South African government, where things just went wrong in the past 20, 30 years, where that needs patching up, that needs healing, that things, policies and stuff people probably forgot about. It's long gone and buried, but people have the new existing government needs to go and dig all the information up and start working on that and making things better. And I'm grateful that there are people with the amount of energy that you've got for all of us to actually help them make it better. Is there any advice you can give the South Africans abroad to help them or to motivate them to start seeing South Africa the way you're seeing it, to get the same sort of vision?
Sure. So I think it's, in doing this, and the conversations I've had, people have said about being careful that it's not seen, because there's very much this negative sentiment around the white savior. And I say these terms very generally because the majority abroad are white. I mean, they are Black South Africans, and that live abroad. But it's I try and say this generally because otherwise I'll end up being attacked quite a lot. But it's, we can't have it being, you talk, when you think about like Western society going into Africa and this Western savior and that kind of, it's not about that at all. It is about building bridges, because there are people. So, coming from a charity perspective and looking at where charities have gone in with good intentions, gone into a community, rolled out a project, built a school, done whatever, and then they leave, and then they come back and the building's not being used or things haven't been continued. Well, did you get the buy-in from the community? And this is part of me trying to bridge the gap. Like, people think that I'm mad that I drove into Soweto by myself. I drove into Mitchell's Plain by myself when I went to go meet Ian Cameron. But I'm like, well, I've probably got more chance of being hijacked in Sandton than something happening to me going in. I'm not going to be stupid. I'm not going to drive into the middle of a place, that's particularly dangerous. Or, I'm either going with someone or I'm going to meet someone, and I'm, traveling during daylight, all that kind of stuff. But I think the biggest piece of advice is not to be fearful, and to realize that the change really does start with us. And the thing is, the more I speak to people on the ground, they'll say we're grateful of the ANC, but we don't know who else to vote for, because there's a trust element, there's an education element that's missing. And again, it's not about party specific. It's about taking that element of parties away for a minute. It's about people learning to work with people. It's about people learning to build and build the trust with people. And it's not about us having all the answers abroad and then, suddenly trying to like make changes. The guys on the ground know what is needed. They know how they need to make those changes, but they need a stepping stone. It could be access to resources, access to education, whatever it might be. Access to home affairs documentation is a massive one, just being able to get an ID or whatever. So I know I've got one case at the moment where it's mom's done a runner, there's a baby, dad has to prove he's got to prove his DNA before he can register. That can only be done privately. That costs a fortune. He has no form of income. So there's so many ways, but at the end of the day, the guys on the ground know what is needed. They all want better lives themselves. So it is a case of, going into communities and building the trust with those communities. And I see that's what these parties are doing, whether it's Build One SA going into Soweto, whereas they're with Ayanda, whether it is Action SA going into Mulwani, whether it's whatever it is about going in, building the trust, building the relationships, going and delivering on certain projects. So with Ayanda, because she is my link into that community, because I went there with her, this Gogo's house gets flooded because these RDP houses were built. There was no proper planning done, so this one lady's house gets flooded every time it rains. So it's like, well, that is they've dug a bit of a trench, but it needs to be made safe. It needs a little bit of resources. We could do a small little crowd fund to provide the resources. There's a bunch of unemployed youngsters walking around there the day that I was there. It's really, really simple, and that goes, we are here for you. It's minimal input, allowing them to do that project themselves, to make that trench safe, to help that Gogo, and then they can obviously clean up, because I went to do the home, the level of water was like halfway up the door and all that kind of stuff. And it's a tiny little project that helps build the trust, and then you can move on to bigger things. And it's building trust between ordinary societies, between those of us abroad and those back home, between government, between parties, between everybody. That's ultimately And it's literally just stick your hand up. There's a lovely quote, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's about taking people from handouts to hand up to handshake. So it's, you know, from the handout mentality. Yeah, so from handout mentality to hand up, hey, I'm someone, I can do something, I've got something to offer, to handshake, you know, if you think in terms of like getting a job or whatever it is. So we all have something to contribute. We all have something to give. Again, whether it is $5 a month, whether it is 5 minutes once a week, whatever it is, just stick your hand up, get involved. I'm more than happy to have one-on-one conversations with people to help them identify where, you know, what their background, what their skill set is, you know, their areas of interest. Could be agriculture, could be ocean, it could be whatever, and also just go home, you know, home as South Africa, but where in South Africa are you from? Go find a project to get involved in your hometown. Go make a little bit of a difference. Like, it all adds up at the end of the day.
Or if you're a pioneer, then get something off the ground. Just go do something. And the example that you used about the house being flooded, that's one of many. That's one of many. Now,
yeah,
look, it's almost 10 p.m. my time. And I can listen to you the whole night. But sooner or later I'm gonna be vacated. Now, I really hope Oorsee can do well, from my end, we're going to do our best to shed light on what you're doing. We'll put all the links and stuff in there. And I know a guy, I don't know if you know the owner of We Are South Africans. Very, very big. Yeah, I've interviewed him about a year ago. Really nice guy. And man, this guy drives massive semi trucks into the poorest places in South Africa, loaded with fruit and vegetables.
He was helping with the Ukraine and with the guys when we had stuff stuck in Ukraine and the flooding, taking trucks of stuff down, trucks of, you know, donated food and things down into Durban. So yeah, know of him very well.
No, he's amazing. So there's no introduction needed then. You are well connected. You are driven like I've never seen before. I don't even know how to end off this interview because we can just keep going. Is there any outgoing thoughts you want to leave with the Oorsee community? And remember, bear in mind, this video, our network spreads pretty wide, not just the 82,000 on our current group. I'm talking about, we've got about 500,000 mixed in New Zealand. Then we have about the same amount spread over the USA and Canada. Now, when you said you think there's almost 2 million South Africans abroad, I think it's more closer to 4. If you consider that there is a lot of South Africans in Canada alone, which I think Canada is pretty much South Africa's biggest export at the moment. And I'm not against South Africans moving abroad. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage it. If you can see greener pastures and you've got a future abroad, go for it. But as long as you breathe, as long as you can remember your traditions and how you were raised, live by those traditions and give back as a thanks for what you've learned. Because I've lived several places and I've seen people just raise their children different. I don't know how to put this without offending anyone. I think myself, you know, there's nothing like a South African.
There's definitely, doesn't matter where you go in the world.
We were made.
There's a South African upbringing, and there's a general consensus on that.
and you're speaking to someone that works in education. I've seen the horror of, and it's not even in South Africa, it's abroad. And as long as people have those traditions in them, as long as they teach their children those traditions, and if we're lucky, I don't really believe in luck. I believe in grace. But if we're lucky, if we can use that word a little bit, then their children will have a little bit of that same traditions as well. And if their parents were pushing back into South Africa, their children and their children will do so as well. And who knows, in the next 20 years, 50 years, maybe 100, we don't know, we will see South Africa peaking that first world country mark. Not that that really means a thing nowadays. If you look at countries like America, that looks like it's going down the drain, but we're going to see the progress that everyone's praying for. So back to my question, outgoing thought. Let me limit you. You've got 30 seconds.
Okay. Compound interest, compound impact. If you think about, if you've got a credit card and that compound, if you're not paying the minimum amount off every month, that compound interest adds up pretty quickly. And that's a negative view, but it can happen on the converse as well. So lots of little good deeds together can make a huge impact, can have a snowball effect. So for me, it is stick your hand up, get involved. It doesn't matter how tiny. And if you think in terms of political change, in terms of voting and the numbers, if you say there's 4 million, if we can get 1 million of those to be voting, if we can get more voting stations, online voting to happen, allowing, once this citizenship story is sorted out, then allowing people to use their passport or their ID, not just their ID book because of consular service issues and stuff. If we can drive that level of overseas voting, we know 95% do vote opposition. The impact, so in the last, depending on how many total number of votes divided by the 400 seats, you're looking at, let's say 60,000, if more people vote, more seats, more votes per seat. So if you have 1 million people abroad voting, knowing the high percentage that do vote for change, what does that mean? We overseas can only vote on the national level, but what does that mean? And it might, if that equates to another 5 to 10 seats, that is a significant change. In terms of on the ground, it could be seeing significant change in your community. If you help fund civic education, voter education in your community, and building trust and engagement with government, local government, with parties, etc., in your community of your hometown, then you are going to see that change happen at the local level in the 26 elections. And this is, for me, it is getting people abroad to start now, to help towards the 26 election, to help towards the 29 election, to be consistently involved in driving that change, compound interest, compound impact, to build significant change come 2029, do exactly the same towards 2034. You say, I've set this as a 15 to 20 year project. It could be done in 10 years. I'll leave it there.
Well done. You just went over by 6 minutes, but that's it. And so to summarize it for me, which is just a simpleton, is that don't vote for a specific political party. That's not what we're saying. Vote for change. If you're not going to do anything from where you are abroad, nothing's going to happen. You've made a huge effort to get people to vote in the last election, and we've seen change. We've seen change. It's happening. It's looking better. I've got feedback coming back from South Africa. That alone should be proof. Now we need consistency. If you're abroad, you've got the means, vote, invest, check in with family, check in with friends. Invest. Yeah. Hayley, thank you so much for your time. Invest in the future of South Africa. Thank you so much. Look, I can go on and on, and to go off topic a little bit. That's in a nutshell. There's lots of reasons I started this app. We were lonely, my wife and I. We realized we're making friends, and we're not seeing enough of them really. And a lot of times, so Australia is a very big place. So we're down in Victoria. Our friends will move up north to Queensland, and they might as well have been to another country. And we wanted a way of easier connecting South Africans abroad, but at the same time teaching and helping people to connect back to their roots, because a lot of people forgot. They forgot where they came from. They forgot what it's like to be a South African. They forgot Leon Schuster's Sweden Short movie. They forgot. I think me and you are probably the same age, because I was 8 years old when apartheid ended, 8 or 9. Yeah, and they forgot all of the excitement that was stirring back then, because there were a lot of excitement going on. I was sort of in the countryside of things, and I heard a bit of the stress that went on. I remember some of the conversations that was going on, but there was also an underlying excitement, because everyone knew it was time. It was time for it to end. It was time for change. And I firsthand experienced the sadness when we realized it's not going well, and it looks like it's going to keep on getting worse. So now I want to encourage people to get part of that excitement again, because it's swinging around. It's getting better.